Welcome to the Visible Art of Translation podcasts. This series of podcasts are part of the EU-funded INCREC project. Our focus is creativity, translation and technology in literary and audiovisual translation. Our goal with this series is to give visibility to the often invisible skills, role and voice of professional translators.
Well, thank you very much, Erna, for taking the time to come and talk to us. We are thrilled to have you on this episode. To shortly introduce her, Erna is a freelance audiovisual translator. She started her career as an audiovisual translator in the early 2000s and became a freelancer in 2004. She has translated one of my favorite TV shows of all time, Dexter, but she also has translated many different movies, TV shows, and documentaries in many different genres. Erna also received the Reed Ondertitelprijs Subtitling Prize for her contribution to the movie Goldie in 2020. So I would like to hear a bit more about you. So tell us a bit about yourself. For example, how did you decide to become a translator and how did you get there?
Yes, I studied German at the University of Utrecht. Looking back, English might have been a better choice, but at that time I just wanted to study a language. And which one didn't matter that much to me, so German. But we had to choose a joint master program. It could be literature, it could be linguistics, and I chose translation studies. And during this master program, we had this guest teacher giving us an introduction in subtitling. And it was just one lecture, but I thought, wow, imagine doing this for a living. So I said to the other students, well, this is my dream job. And I expected everybody to be just as excited as I was. But I noticed I was the only one. So I thought, well, in that case, I'm going back to this teacher and I'll just ask her if she can teach me more. And so I did. And she gave me one lesson. And after this first lesson, she said, yeah, I think this could be something for you. I think you understand how it works. And that was all I needed to hear. So I looked up all the subtitling companies in Holland online and sent out some emails. And one of them offered to train me. And I've been subtitling ever since. It's been almost 24 years now.
Wow, that's really cool. So that you by accident actually decided that this is my dream job and I would like to do this. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So in those 24 years that you've already been working as an audiovisual translator, you have translated many different videos, series, documentaries. So I was wondering, which one of your translations have you enjoyed the most?
Yes, that's a difficult one because I've had so much fun working on so many films and series. I think I tend to get excited about every project I work on, even if I know it's an absolute B film. I do prefer fiction over documentaries and reality shows because I love translating dialogue. And what also makes a project more enjoyable for me is if my client cares about quality as much as I do. And one movie that really stood out in that regard was Nayola. It's an animated film set in Angola, and the dialogue was in Portuguese. And the producer had an English translation and thought I could work with that. And when I explained he really needed a translator who understood the source text, he asked me to team up with Ana Lopes Michielsen. She's a literary translator who specializes in Portuguese. And this was a new experience for me. A client who said, okay, let's hire a second translator then, so you can work on it together. And it was great. It was great working with Anna, and it was a beautiful film. But the best part for me was being able to work for people who said, this film is important to us, so we need to make sure the translation is really good. And as logical as that may seem, it was actually a rare experience. So yes, Nayola was a special one for me.
That's really nice to hear. And yeah, for me, it would make sense if it always was the case. But so you're telling me that's not always the case, that it
unfortunately
is like that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really too bad. Well, yeah, but it sounds like a wonderful project, and also to work with someone else. It's a special experience, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah.
So I know that you won the Reed Prize, as I already told, for your contribution to Goldie. But for a fact, I also know that you were nominated for this prize before, and that was for your contribution to Dexter. And Dexter happens to be one of my favorite TV shows. I really love that show. I've watched it twice, actually. So, how was translating this series for you?
Yes, Dexter. Yeah, it's one of my favorite shows as well. Perhaps I should mention that I translated the show for the NPO, the public broadcaster in Holland.
Mhm.
Dexter is on some of the streaming services as well, but with different subtitles. And I wouldn't want purists to think those are mine. But yes, Dexter was so much fun. I really loved it as a viewer, and it couldn't have been more fun for me as a subtitler. The dialogue was brilliant. Dexter's dry voiceover comments, Brenda with her creative swearing, and also the forensic terminology and the police lingo. That's really something I like sinking my teeth into. So it was the full package for me. And I was so sad when it came to an end. I translated 6 out of 9 seasons. So I almost felt like one of the team. And I actually did the craziest things to stay on the show. Because, for example, when I was pregnant with my first daughter, I spent my last trimester translating a season that hadn't even been assigned to me. So at that time, I wasn't even sure if I would get the project. But I
Ah,
didn't
you were
want
so
to.
committed.
Yes, didn't want to run the risk of having to say no because of the baby. So yeah, I went through a lot of trouble for that show, and it was worth it. It was really, really great. Yeah,
Yeah, I can imagine. So Dexter was also a bit of your baby, to say.
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, because it's such a wonderful show and it has so many layers and also the development that Dexter goes through, so to say, during these 9 seasons. But too bad
Yes.
that you couldn't translate the last 3 seasons.
No, I didn't translate the first 3.
Oh, the first
So
three.
yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
sorry, I
yeah.
misunderstood.
No, no, no.
Yeah, so the first 3. But then I don't remember, is the Trinity Killer, is that the third season or the fourth season?
Fourth, yeah.
Yeah, fourth season. Because, and that's my next question about. So there are many, many quite shocking scenes and details in Dexter. And please don't listen if you would like to watch the show. But for example, the one at the end of the season with the Trinity Killer. So the first season, actually, you translated. How is translating those kind of scenes for you?
Yeah, that was the only thing I didn't always enjoy. I actually rewatched the show with my daughter recently, and it was much more graphic than I remembered.
Mhm.
I think that when I'm working, I'm going through an episode so very slowly that it's like watching everything in slow motion. So, especially jump scares and startling scenes are probably a little less intense for me. But I do remember flagging some subtitles for myself, like skip the rest of this scene. We can add notes to subtitles in our software. So that way I would make sure I wouldn't accidentally watch it again when I was reviewing my translation. So yeah. And of course, it helps that there's usually very little dialogue in the killing scenes. So not much work for me there. But I did have a hard time sometimes translating the recaps, the previously on Dexter parts, because these recaps are usually filled with dialogue and need a lot of work because it's often heavily edited. So we need to condense the translation and try out different options to make it fit. So sometimes I would cover up part of the screen so I would only see the subtitles, but I would still hear the sounds. So I didn't always enjoy that, no. And I absolutely cried when I worked on the scene that you mentioned at the end of
Oh,
season 4. Yeah, that shouldn't have happened.
no, no, it was just like everything. I remembered watching this with my husband, and he was like, "Oh, everything is well." And I'm like, "Oh no, I know what's coming because I watched it already before that was with one of
Right.
my housemates during university." And I was like, "Oh no, I know what is coming." And
Yes.
oh, you're gonna be so unhappy about this. So
Yes.
yeah, I get it. I totally get it. But I was wondering, how long does it take you to like translate one episode of Dexter? Because actually, no idea how long it would take you.
Yes. 2 to 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really long because the episodes are like 15 minutes or so, maybe
Yeah.
60.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, and it takes you 2 to 3 days. Yeah. Didn't have a clue how long it would take, but that's a long time. So if you have, what was it, 9 episodes per season, something like that? 12?
Yeah. 12. Yeah.
Yeah, it takes you more than a month.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So then it really feels like your baby because it takes so much time and it's really like almost a full-time job for a couple of months. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you have translated six, it basically takes you like between 6 months and a year in total to translate it. So I can imagine, yeah, that it's
Yeah.
really, yeah, really striking. And what was your favorite season to translate?
Good one. I'm not sure. I think I like them all.
Yeah, so you don't really have a favorite, so to
No.
say. And I was thinking back of all the seasons I've watched, and yeah, the Trinity Killer comes so clearly to mind because I think it was one of my favorite ones. Yeah, because it has so many layers. He's getting more of a normal life, so to say, and all of a sudden it stops, you know? So
Yeah,
really,
yeah, that's
really
true.
hard to watch.
Yeah, no, I agree. As a viewer, I totally agree. But as a subtitler, for me, it's like as long as Deborah's in there, as long as Dexter's voiceover is in there, it's always fun for me because they really season the dialogue. So,
Yeah, they really make the show.
yes.
Yeah, and I also remember Batista, which was really fun. And
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and Masuka, of course.
yeah, of course. I can imagine it was a pleasure for you to translate this show.
Absolutely.
So having talked enough about Dexter, I think you have also translated in many different genres. But I'm curious, what is your favorite genre and why? You already told me, like, yeah, I like fiction better than documentaries. But
Yeah.
is there a genre that you prefer, or what are your favorite? You can also mention more, or
Yeah, I have three actually. I always tell my clients cops, kids, comedy, so they can remember easily. And those are the genres I specialize in. And I realized only recently why that is, what they have in common. They all require strong subtitling skills, not just translation skills, but subtitling skills. Yeah, a kid show, for example, needs to have subtitles that are extremely easy to read, of course, because children are still learning how to read the subtitles. And we have to leave out everything the viewer doesn't need or already knows. But the translation should still feel very fluent and clear, especially with young viewers who may not understand the English at all and aren't used to reading subtitles yet. So that's very important. And in a way, cop shows are similar. Dialogue is often filled with little clues, and we have to make sure that the viewer gets these little pieces of information. For instance, I watched an episode of Law and Order SVU with very fast dialogue, and one of the characters said the rape kit was negative. And this was translated as ze is niet verkracht, which is quite creative, which translates back to she wasn't raped. And in the context of the scene, this worked very well because it's brief and clear, and it was exactly the information the writers intended for the viewer to understand. So instead of looking for a Dutch equivalent or description of the word rape kit, the translator focused on what the viewer needed to grasp from that very fast dialogue. And with comedy, it's the same. Jokes have to really work in context. The translation has to be creative, but not too creative, because the viewer shouldn't feel like they are hearing one joke and reading a different one at the same time. For example, perhaps you know Modern Family, the sitcom.
oh yeah,
And
I know it. I've also watched it.
oh yeah, good. And I was watching an episode where Jay, the grumpy granddad, attends a pregnancy class, his wife Gloria, and he
Oh
made a
yeah.
joke to break the ice, but the joke was a little inappropriate, so no one laughed. And then he mumbled to his wife Gloria, "Tough crowd." And this was translated as "vrolijke boel," which translates back to something like, well, everybody's in a good mood. So there's irony in translation, and in subtitling, this could be tricky because viewers shouldn't have to think about the translation. They shouldn't even know they are reading the subtitles at all. But this worked perfectly because, and this is what I love about subtitles, the tone of Jay's voice matched perfectly with the Dutch phrase. So he was saying, "tough crowd." And if you would say vrolijke boel like that, vrolijke boel, you would immediately know that it's ironic. So that's what I mean by subtitling skills. It's different from
Just translating.
Yeah, it's you have to do more.
Yeah, so you really keep in mind the people that are watching the show or the movie and not only focus on like the
Translating the
translation.
words.
Yeah, only the words that are in there. Yeah, I can imagine. Actually, before I started working on this project, I really never thought about translations, whether it be like literary translations or subtitling. But since I started this project, you tend to think about it more. But now what you're telling me is, again, you're like, it makes so much sense that it is like this. But at the same time, yeah, you never really think about it, which is good, because then you're an excellent.
Exactly. And that's how it should be. Yeah. It really makes me happy to work with that. So it's really why I specialize in these genres, because it really makes me happy if I find solution like this that works seamlessly. And yeah, I never get bored because it's never one size fits all in subtitling. This translation I just mentioned works in this context, but I couldn't think the next time I hear somebody say tough crowd, I know this one, it's Vrolijke Boel, because it may not work at all in a different context. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine. It is, you have to think about it every time again. And that's why it also takes quite a bit of time, of course, the translation, the
exactly.
subtitling part.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and well, building on this, what makes a translation outstanding in your opinion? What do you think is the best quality or qualities to have as an audiovisual translator?
I enjoy translations that flow smoothly and feel seamless. And I want the translation to be so natural that I don't realize it's a translation. And a good subtitle should have that quality, but it should also be a condensed version of the original text. So in subtitling, it's all about finding the perfect balance. We want a condensed translation, but it should never read like a telegram. And we should be creative, but the viewer shouldn't notice the translation. So we can't be too creative. So it's all about that perfect balance in subtitling.
Yeah, so this balance is really, really important. And
yeah,
what would you say are really good qualities to have as an audiovisual translator?
being really creative, because even though you can be too creative, you have to be incredibly creative to come up with 10 solutions and then find out which one is best. And also knowing that the solution you found yesterday perhaps can't be used next time. You have to be creative and flexible to keep looking for the perfect balance.
Yeah, this balance sounds indeed very, very important. And of course, the project that this podcast is part of, the Incorrect project, is about creativity in translation. So, and you emphasize actually that creativity in translation, in subtitling, is super important in order for people to have the best possible experience when watching a movie or a TV show. So I get it. But the Interact project is not only about creativity, but also about machine translation. So what do you think is the impact of machine translation on translation in general and on your creativity in particular?
Yes, machine translation is already being used in subtitling, and I think it's disastrous. As I explained, subtitling is creative translating, and it's never one size fits all. And I think most people would agree that machine translation isn't anywhere near ready to replace human translators, but even experienced subtitlers who are paid to produce high quality subtitles seem to be much less creative and accurate when they use a machine translation as their starting point. So I feel that at this stage, machine translation is not only unhelpful, but actually hinders the quality of subtitling.
Yeah, I do understand, because I start to notice now when I'm watching something on television, I sometimes notice that this is not like translated by a human, because there are so many errors and so many weird translations of what you said about this tough crowd versus Vrolijke Boel, and then maybe a more direct translation of the word. So I do understand that could be a big problem. And do you see any impact on your own creativity or your own job, like so to say?
Well, I don't accept jobs if I'm expected to edit a machine translation. And if they provide me with machine translation just as an extra option, I immediately delete it, because I think it's hindering me in my creativity.
And are there any tools that you're using while subtitling?
Google is my best friend.
Everybody's best friend.
Yes, because as a subtitler, of course, we have to, today I could be subtitling something about music, and tomorrow it could be about a series in a hospital or something. So you have to do a lot of research on several topics each day. So Google is my best friend. And of course, lexicons and the works, but yeah, no special tools, I think.
Okay, so I have one last question, one little bonus question, so to say, because you told me that you study German. But
Yes.
do you still translate things from German to Dutch, or is it only from English that you translate?
Mostly English. Yeah. And that's why I said, looking back, I should have chosen English.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's nice. Once a year or something, I get a German film or something German. But at this point, if I get something German, I take extra time to do it because I'm so used to hearing English, and especially American English, that German is actually more difficult for me to translate from, especially if it's a special dialect from Austria or Switzerland or something. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And you prefer American English above British English, or?
Not necessarily, but I think it's just where my experience lies.
Okay, yeah, I can imagine. Okay, I think that these were all my questions I had for you. So thank you very much, Erna, for participating in our podcast. I've learned a
Thank you.
great deal about your work and also your translation process. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you again to our invited speaker, and to our listeners. Thank you for being there, and feel free to share our podcasts with your family, friends, and colleagues. This is part of a series of podcasts of the EU-funded INCREC project. So follow us for more episodes, and please share your comments on this platform. See you next time.